Well, hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I know I see, at least I see a few familiar faces, which is always nice. Um, so my name is Reeta Achari. I'm a neurologist, and I practice now both in the Memorial and my office is in the Heights. And I practice what I call nutritional neurology as part of my general neurology practice. And I'm going to talk to you today about why eating matters and exactly how we use food to fuel our bodies. I wanted to start off by telling you why eating matters to me. And if you look around, I'm actually sitting in a kitchen. This kitchen is in my office. And part of that has to do with this matters, nutrition matters so much to me. It's the basic building block for good health that I try to do this every day. We cook in this office every day. And my background is really, well, it's an immigrant's background. So I was born in India. And when I started my life, I was in a small town. There was no refrigeration, and everything was cooked fresh. So literally, the cow would be brought to, down this, to be milked. Fish was fresh, eggs were fresh, everything was cooked in a fresh way. I, of course, had the great fortune of coming to the United States, of course, to Texas, and did the typical immigrant journey of, the American dream, which then became, hamburger helper and fast food. And early on, when I was young, it didn't seem to matter. But as I got older and older, my food habits were starting to actually make me sick, not well. Some of that came from being very busy in medical school and in early practice. I lived off of zingers, raspberry zingers from the vending machine and hot chocolate. So I wasn't embracing good habits, and it finally caught up with me. I want to talk a little bit about the standard American diet. And in the beginning, the standard American diet and what was the old food pyramid of protein, fats, carbohydrates, and what we used to think of as a balanced diet was actually the key to good health. The world looked to us for how we ate, and Americans were healthy. We had good nutrition, and it was a wonderful thing. Somewhere in the 1990s, as fast food and processed foods became almost universally adopted in our culture, the standard American diet, which, yes, the acronym is SAD, started making us sick. It wasn't so much what, the things, the proteins and the fats and the carbohydrates, we were still eating the same food groups, but now they were highly processed. And we were doing a lot more in terms of convenience foods than how our grandparents ate. They still ate meats and grains and fruits and vegetables, but theirs were coming from farms, they were coming from grocers that got them every day, and so it wasn't so bad. So anyway, I will say again that I am a recovering Taco Bell girl. My high school was located across the street from one of the first Taco Bells in Houston. Seemed to be fine, and I ate there, I think, almost every day. Not too long ago, I spoke to the wife of someone, and she was sick with nutritional illnesses, and I was explaining to her that I was a recovering Taco Bell girl because she thought I did everything perfectly, which I certainly don't. And he was the vice president for Taco Bell when they came into Texas. And what he told me was, back in the late 70s, Taco Bell sourced everything locally. They got the meat from ranchers. They got the lettuces and tomatoes and everything from local farmers. And then as the company grew and got bigger and bigger, it became about getting homogenized or very consistent quality. And they started not doing that. And so, of course, now it's not nearly as good as it was. So for me, feeling good, again, meant returning to both cooking and then getting back in touch with farmers and ranchers in my area. And that's made all the difference. So the question is, what is nutrition, right? We think a lot about, there's wellness, there's nutrition. For me, the idea of nutrition has now turned into an industrial complex. If you go into the grocery store, you will see shelves and shelves lined with supplements and superfoods that are in bags. And we have a variety of diets. It's the first of the year, so everyone is selling their way to lose weight. And of course, since we come back to it every year, it's obvious that we don't manage to lose and keep the weight off. So this industrial complex of nutrition is something that has confused how we are supposed to eat, what we are supposed to eat. So we need to really examine how we are seeing that. But the definition of nutrition, if you look in the Oxford Dictionary, right, it's the process of providing or obtaining food necessary for health and growth. Nutrition is about how we feed our bodies. It is the fundamental thing that we do every day. You'll hear me say that again. It's the fundamental thing we do every day to not only feed our bodies, but also stay healthy. And when we start talking about nutrients, micronutrients, macronutrients, nutrition, what we're talking about is actually basic biochemistry. We're talking about cells at the microscopic level and what they're doing in order to function. So that is what we're feeding, right? So in all of these cells and all of these different organ systems that make up the miracle that is the human body, that is what nutrition is really about. All right, so food, when we talk about food, we talk about macronutrients, and macronutrients are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. They are required in larger quantities, obviously, than the micronutrients. And contrary to popular belief, your body, the miracle that it is able to turn one thing to the other. So carbohydrates get metabolized and their breakdown products feed into fat metabolism. Fat can become carbohydrate, and the same thing with proteins as they are broken down. So when we give our bodies a wide range of these things, the body knows what to do with it, and it makes what you need. Micronutrients are vitamins and minerals and several other compounds like choline, and they are required in smaller dosages, but still required on a daily basis. So, we human beings eat. We have to eat every day. We don't eat once a week. We need these things every single day. So, what are vitamins? Vitamins are organic compounds that our bodies don't make, with the exception of a little vitamin D that we can make through sunshine and our skin. But we have to get them from food sources, right? So we're really dependent on vitamins to make all of the reactions in our body go. And again, adequate supplies of both micro and macronutrients. Remember, macronutrients, proteins, fat, and carbohydrates, all of those three are needed every single day to fuel the cells in your body. So this is very discouraging, but I don't want you to be discouraged. I'd like you to think about this as an opportunity to make things better for all of us. So NHANES, that's the National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey, is something that's been done by the CDC. Of course, in a pandemic, we all now know the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and it's a very large, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients, people in our population. And NHANES looks at nutrition across our population. And what you discover when you analyze the NHANES data And unless you're a sociologist or an anthropologist or a nutritionist who's looking at this is not easy data to find. I had to work very hard. We're not taught this in medical school, but I had to go and help people, have people help me analyze this data and get the tables. But we're not really healthy in the United States. We have an abundance of food, but 50% of us are deficient. And this is using blood work and blood levels that this is determined, that 50% of us are deficient in vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin D. If you look up vitamin A deficiency, which I had to look up when I diagnosed my first case, you find that it is something that we only see in the third world. Mali would be the first country, you know, that you would find, but it doesn't say anything about the United States. And yet our own data tells us that 50% of our population is vitamin A deficient. And in my practice, I find that to be true, which was very surprising to me. Vitamin B12, folic acid, vitamin B6, and zinc. Of course, we all know about zinc now, thanks to coronavirus. We are also deficient. I'm trying to determine, and I do believe that this B12 deficiency that we have seen has been occurring since the 70s, sort of we're getting lower and lower. And part of that has to do with the fact that we no longer really eat red meat. Most of us have chosen fish or chicken, and B12, the best source of B12 is actually red meat. So when we have changed our diet significantly, some of these nutrients have decreased. And overall, 70% of the preventable diseases in the United States are actually due to diet. So we have a wonderful opportunity here to make ourselves healthier just by what we eat. Okay, the food pyramid. You can't do a talk on nutrition without the food pyramid. It is so confusing. When I was a child, the food pyramid was a pyramid. Somewhere along the way, it got flipped. And then it's sort of all up for grabs. I like our current methodology, which is, the current guidelines are that we get a variety of vegetables, that we eat whole fruits, and then the overall servings, and then there are 1 cup servings, should be 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day. Now, a lot of us are juicing, and it seems to be very popular, and people feel well. When we juice, we are getting a lot of the vitamins and nutrients and the flour, or the lots of the nutrients, but we aren't getting the whole fiber part of the fruit or vegetable. So it's important that we try to get as whole as possible. Again, nothing says that there's no room for juicing in our diets, but that shouldn't be the whole way that we consume our fruits and vegetables. Now, again, grains. Let's talk a little bit about grains. Grains have been vilified significantly, but whole grains are actually good for us. We have, as human beings, for tens of thousands of years, eaten grain, and we get a lot of nutritional value from grains. So they should be part, unless you have celiac disease or if you have a wheat allergy, you really need to incorporate, again, whole grains, not highly processed, but whole grains into our diet. And that's part of our recommendations. The other things that are also part of the recommendations are that we have dairy. And dairy, the interesting thing about dairy is that full fat dairy, so whole milk, allows you to absorb the vitamin D in the milk better than if it's skim. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, and without some fat, your body doesn't absorb it. So we have to remember that milk is a food, not a drink, despite my husband using it as a drink. But we have to remember that small amounts, so maybe 2 ounces of whole milk, yogurt, cheese, throughout the day, 3 times a day can be, and is a good part, a healthy part of a well-balanced diet. A variety of proteins are recommended. So that includes, red meat, it includes fish, includes poultry. I'm going to say a word about the sources of these things. So grass-fed red meats, whether it's beef, bison, pork, lamb, when animals are grass-fed, the fat that they have looks very much like olive oil. The fats that develop are monounsaturated fats and tend to be healthier for us. You may have heard of the American College of Cardiology and a type of beef called Wagyu beef. And that actually has a heart healthy certification. It's a very fatty beef, but again, because of the way that the animals are fed, the fat is a healthy fat. So just like we're thinking about avocado and olive oil, the way the animal is fed changes the type of fat. So grass-fed meats, pasture-raised chickens are very important. If you taste the meat of pasture-raised chicken, they tend not to be quite as beefy or chickeny, I guess. They're not as large, but the taste is really good. They have actually very low fat, and they are a good source of proteins. And then when we talk about fish, there's always a little bit of debate about how much fish and is there mercury. And so I always say about 3 ounces, 3 times a week of wild caught fish. Again, if you feed fish grains, as many farm-raised fish are fed, they're not going to develop all of that lovely fat that comes if they're eating plankton and are in the wild, right? So all of those phytochemicals that make fish and fish oils healthy for us occur when fish are in the wild, not when we start feeding them the things that we feed them when they're farm raised. And then the other recommendations is that, we should limit our saturated and trans fats. We should reduce our sodium, limit our sodium, and then no added sugars. That doesn't mean all sugar is bad. Fruit is good. A little bit of honey is good. We don't want highly processed and then added sugars. I'm going to say a little bit, actually, I'm going to do a little later. This is behind me is my salad dressing station. I'm hoping to show you very quickly how to make salad dressings. Added sugars is an interesting thing. Methylcellulose is a sugar, it's a carbohydrate, and we use lots of carbohydrates as thickening agents in foods. So here you are getting all your fresh fruits and vegetables, and then you're pouring bottled salad dressing on there. The majority of bottled salad dressings are creamy or kept in suspension at room temperature by using sugars. And those are added sugars, but they don't have to be declared as sugar on the label because it's not an ingredient, it's a thickening agent. So these are sort of the difficulties that we have despite trying to do absolutely the best that we can. We are all trying to be healthy. Yet when we go to the grocery store, there are certain pitfalls and it becomes difficult. All right. One diet does not fit all, right? We all like to say, okay, diets come into fashion. We eat for so many different reasons, right? We eat for health, we eat for religious reasons, we eat because we're hungry, we eat because we're sad, we eat because we're lonely, we eat because we're baking bread in the middle of a pandemic. We eat to do lots of things. We eat to celebrate, we eat to comfort. And so there are lots of reasons, but one diet does not fit all. Depending on your age, depending on your sex, depending on your energy level, depending on your health conditions. So if you've got high blood pressure, perhaps limiting sodium is critical. If you have high cholesterol, perhaps limiting the amount of saturated fats and meats in your diet will be critical. If you are someone who has diabetes or high blood sugar or tending towards that way, then limiting the carbohydrates will be important for you. And so many of these things are determined by our genetics, but we can try to outrun our genes for as long as we can. We may not be fully successful, but certainly we can try to do something to hold off some of these illnesses. Depending on our weight goals, our diets are different. For women who are in their post-menopausal or menopausal times of their life, we don't metabolize the same way as men of the same age do. So our caloric needs decrease because of the way our hormones are affecting weight and fat. And so it's important to allow that to guide what you're going to do. And then I want to just talk a little bit about restricted diets, right? And restricted diets are necessary for many reasons, but they are also cause for concern. So we've got all sorts of diets that people are on, paleo, keto, vegan, vegetarian, Whole30, Daniel fast. I mean, they're just blood type, so many different diets. And the majority of them ask you to restrict something. When you restrict your diet and don't consume an entire food group, whether it's carbohydrates or proteins, animal proteins, which are what we call first-class proteins. That's what your body assimilates as protein the quickest. Not that you can't do it from dairy and legumes. You can. It's just a little harder for your body to do. We have to think about very carefully what vitamins, what minerals are we going to miss by restricting our diets. And by doing so and paying attention to that, you really need to make sure that you are making up in supplementation what you are missing when you are restricting your diet. I am not a fan, and I'm just going to say it, of the ketogenic diet. My training is in epilepsy, and so I used to administer the ketogenic diet, which is a way to stop seizures or reduce seizures in young patients especially. The high fat in that diet can be, and it's a high fat bolus, can cause problems with clotting and clogging arteries. So if you've already got high cholesterol, think about that may not be a great diet for you. All right, vegetarians, I'll just go back. So vegetarians and vegans, but vegetarians especially are going to be B12 deficient and also vitamin D deficient, because again, red meat is the main source of B12 in our diet. So again, if you're going to choose one of these diets as a health option, think about what you're missing and supplement. All right. Vitamins and minerals. So we've got fat-soluble vitamins, water-soluble vitamins, and then a whole host of minerals. The fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. And you have to be careful with those because they hang out in your body for a little longer. And also, if you are over or under, so deficiency and toxicity states can both be bad. Vitamin A, we think about as something that helps our vision. So night blindness was the first thing that we knew about vitamin A. How do we know what these vitamins do, right? Because they're involved in so many different reactions. Zinc is involved in over 300 reactions in the body, in the cell. We find out because when people get deficient and then we see a problem, then we go find out, this is the vitamin that caused it. So that's how we know that vitamin A causes night blindness. And Texas A&M is one of the most wonderful places because they have created a vitamin A rich rice that is preventing night blindness in many places in the world. Vitamin D, from a brain standpoint, it is involved in supporting the white matter. The majority of your brain and nerves are white matter. It's the myelin that covers the axons, the actual neurons. Vitamin D is also important in bone health. It's important in your autoimmune function, and it's involved with, for vertigo, the shape of the little rocks in our ears. So again, these vitamins do a variety of things. Vitamin E, we know, is involved in memory. It's also involved in steroid hormone production. And vitamin K, we know mainly about because it, if you take a lot of it, can cause issues with your clotting. We have lots of B vitamins, B1, B2, B6, B12, biotin, niacin. These are all B vitamins, and they are involved in, again, multiple things, multiple reactions in your body. Vitamin C, we know mainly as the disease of pirates, right? Scurvy. And vitamin C is necessary for collagen function. So to have normal hair, skin, nails, tendons. In the old days, if you had back pain, the first thing that you would get is actually vitamin C to help the ligaments and tendons in your spine flex and be healthier. And so vitamin C can actually reduce back pain if you are low. And remember, 50% of us are low. So vitamin C is a good thing. Coenzyme Q10. We know about coenzyme Q10 for two reasons. One, it is inside the mitochondria. The reaction that then allows the energy of the cell to be created requires CoQ10. And it is also critical in keeping cell membranes, so the coverings of each of our cells, stable. We know CoQ10 does that because when we started giving statins for cholesterol and people developed muscle pain, we know that those statins preferentially deplete CoQ10 from muscle. And that's why a lot of physicians now, when they give a statin for cholesterol, they will also add CoQ10. We can do levels of all of these things. Zinc, copper, magnesium, manganese. Of course, zinc is a star now because of coronavirus, and we are low in zinc. These are found again in plant sources, animal sources, but again in a wide variety of diets. I will stress again, too little is not good for you. Too much is not good for you. The B vitamins, of all of them, the only one that we worry about toxicity, since they are water soluble, is vitamin B6. Supplemental vitamin B6. So if you take vitamin B6 that is in a synthetic form, it can store up in your body and then cause problems with nerves. It can damage nerves. So you can have numbness, tingling, burning, pain. So just be careful about those things. And again, vitamin A, D, and E, make sure that you don't go too high because it can cause problems. And remember again that all of these things, we shouldn't, in my view, look at vitamin A or we're going to eat vitamin A, we're going to eat vitamin C. We should look at them as a holistic viewpoint because they're all working in concert in the body in the miraculous way that they do. So the body will need all these things on a daily basis. You can eat all these things on a daily basis, but it knows what to do. So have faith and have trust in what your body can do. All right, I'm going to give you some sad realities, and please don't get discouraged and don't get mad at me. Apples. We were talking about cold storage of foods a little while ago, why go to the farmer's market. Apples all over the world, not just the United States, apples are cold stored for 9 to 12 months before you eat them. They are working right now in the United States, actually not working on. We have developed a brand of apple called the Cosmic Crisp, which is delicious. But it is a cross that allows something that tastes like a Honey Crisp, because we love those apples more than anything, to stay in cold storage longer. Honey Crisps are very, very hard to cold store and maintain both the crispness and the aroma. So apples are cold stored. So if you're eating an apple a day doesn't keep the doctor away because it's not giving you vitamin C. It is giving you fiber and it's delicious. But when I eat an apple, I think, okay, this is almost a dessert. It's sweet, but I'm not getting a lot of nutritional value. Rotisserie chickens, many of us use these products and they're delicious. The problem with rotisserie chickens is that they are very high in sodium, and many of them are very high in sugar as well. one of the big box stores, so Costco, which their rotisserie chickens are their loss leader, and you got to go all the way to the back of the store to get them. And they sell about 80 million chickens a year. One of my patients had high blood sugar and he had trouble getting it down. And when I called the folks at Costco, they let me know that their chickens are actually brined in sugar and salt solution. So that sugar is soaked into the chicken. So you're not just eating chicken, you're actually eating a lot of salt and sugar. So just beware of that. And we use these convenience foods to help with protein, but just remember, maybe don't add any more salt or sugar to whatever it is you're eating. Avocado toast, I know. In its main form, which is good bread, avocado, maybe some sliced radishes, and a little bit of salt or herbs or whatever you want, that's great. The mistake we're making is adding fat to fat. So when we put an egg yolk on top of that avocado toast, all of a sudden in one meal, your body is having to do a lot to work with a big fat bolus that it's getting. It doesn't matter that the avocado is good fat or that even the egg yolk is good fat. It's just too much at once. So eat the avocado, maybe an egg at another meal. Try not to do it together because it's a lot for your body to handle. We talked about bread a little bit already. Again, bread is good, but bread is good flour, yeast, salt, maybe a little sugar, maybe some milk if you need to go that way. But when you read the bread label at the grocery store, what normally is there is wheat, and then it says gluten, gluten, gluten. And that's how we get it soft. It's how it gets its shelf life. And it's also what causes us all that added gluten is making us feel sick. So good bread, and bread is good food, but it has to be good bread. So think about the kind of bread that you're eating. With the exception of people who have celiac disease or are wheat allergic, grains, whole grains in the form of good bread are a good part of a healthy diet. And then frozen foods. When I was young, I was told that frozen fruits and vegetables were really good. And they are for a variety of reasons. But the one thing you have to remember is they have no vitamin C in them. The critical path of vitamin C is that the moment you start to chill it, it decreases, and it's an antioxidant, and it just very quickly disappears from whatever it's in. And the moment you pick the fruit or vegetable from the plant, the vitamin C starts to degrade. So while frozen foods are, and I'm not opposed to them, I'm just telling you that vitamin C is less. So if you're going to use something frozen, and I still make soups and freeze them, but when I reheat them, I add something fresh, right? So let it be convenient, but remind yourself that maybe I have to add a little vitamin C, maybe a squeeze of lemon. So there are ways around that. But just remember, frozen foods, no vitamin C. All right, so food is simple, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be a chopped champion or, all the cooking shows that we see now. And it really is delicious in the simplest forms. I encourage people to try something new. Try a food you haven't tried each week. And think about a balance, and this is throughout the day, of cooked, of raw, of pickled, of fermented. Spices and herbs, I always think of them as power packs. They're little bits that go a long way. Our original medications, our original treatments for ailments from Egyptian times to the Middle Ages, to Ayurveda, to Chinese traditional medicine, to Native American medicine, they used herbs as the basic building blocks for how we created treatments and tonics. So remember, they're packed with things that are good for you. And again, throughout the day, as you're eating, enjoy what you eat. You're supposed to. There's a lot of brain real estate devoted to how things taste, but think about fueling your body. All right, so again, add something fresh to your pantry ingredients, eat seasonally, eat locally, make sure that you set aside time, right? That's the thing we never do. We schedule everything, but nobody schedules a meal or here's my time to prep a meal. I make lists of what I have to do on Saturdays and Sundays, and I never managed to put lunch in there. So make time for that. And remember that it is really the most important thing that you do for yourself to keep yourself healthy. That will keep you away from doctors. All right, just want to tell you a couple of quick stories if we've got a little time. So one of the reasons I actually got into doing what I do, which is nutritional neurology, about 15 years ago, I had a lovely gentleman who came to see me. He had already been seen by probably 6 neurologists. He'd had MRIs and spinal taps and nerve biopsies and all of these things. He'd gone to a rheumatologist, a psychiatrist. He'd seen everybody. He was an attorney. And he was having strange numbness and tingling in his fingertips, and he just couldn't think very clearly. And of course, I thought, well, what am I going to do for you? I have no idea. Everyone's already looked at you. And I started asking him, well, have you done anything different? You know, maybe he was exposed to, maybe he picked up a new hobby of welding, and he was exposed to difficult, you know, strange fumes. Maybe he was working in a warehouse. I was trying to think of anything and everything. And very interestingly, he sort of came back one day and he called me and he said, you know, I did one thing different about 6 months before I started having my symptoms, and I went to a gluten-free diet. He did a pretty good gluten-free diet, and he felt better until he felt worse. So we checked all of his vitamin levels, and what we discovered was that he was tremendously low. He was deficient in vitamin B1. Vitamin B1 deficiency causes an old disease that we refer to as beriberi. Beriberi has to do with nerve dysfunction, so numbness and tingling, but also brain fog. And left untreated, it can be devastating to the nervous system. He was getting just enough of everything he needed, but not enough to be healthy. So once we discovered that that's what it was, I gave him injections, then we gave him some supplements, and what I did was teach him how to bake bread, and he got better, restored to 100% in 6 months, and he's doing great. So that is an example of when you do a gluten-free diet, make sure that you are getting what you need. The second patient, which was my first case of scurvy and how I discovered that we were vitamin C deficient in this country. I never thought we could be. So I had a young lady, and she had epilepsy, and she stopped taking her medicines because she was convinced that it was giving her a rash and abdominal pain, but she'd been on the same medicines for 10 years. And I checked her vitamin C level. Now, I had never checked a vitamin C level. I didn't know it could even be done. Neither had the lab, but we sent off for it, and it came back and it was 0. And when I was, I was so shocked, and I thought I probably have done something wrong. So I called the lab, and the lab techs had already checked it on themselves because they'd never done it either. And it really was 0. And when I asked her, well, why are you vitamin C deficient? Well, the only thing she was eating, 2 cans of Progresso chicken noodle soup, or tortilla, I think it was chicken tortilla soup. And that has no vitamin C in it at all, despite having little beans and corn on the picture in front. Again, we gave her vitamin C, and now she has been epilepsy free. She's been seizure free, back on her meds, and I think she's graduating this year from University of Washington in Seattle. So she's a wonderful case. And then we were talking about vitamin toxicities. I saw very recently a lovely woman who has horrible headaches. And when we checked her vitamin A, because vitamin A can cause increased pressure in the brain and can cause headaches, her vitamin A was through the roof. And when I asked her what she ate, she showed me a giant bag of carrots. They were beautiful carrots, all different colors. She ate 1 bag of carrots every day. She was told this was good for her, and it helped her lose weight. She's very happy. So we stopped that many carrots. We reduced the amount of carrots she's eating. And she was very happy because I added some dark chocolate, which is good for her, instead of the carrots. And she too is doing very well. So what we eat, how we eat, makes a big difference. And these are people who were trying to do the best things for themselves and ended up in my office. So think about that. Really eating well keeps you away from people like me. Again, just summing up, keep it simple, keep it fresh, embrace variety, make time for it. All right, I'm going to do salad dressing. Here's the recipe for a salad dressing. So when you get all those lovely, 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 lovely fruits and vegetables, please don't drown them with things that contain bad things. So here, this is my easy salad dressing station. All right, I've got a couple of things. I've got a mason jar. You can get cool plastic lids for jars so they don't corrode from the acid. And this is what I'm going to do. Let me see. I'm going to stand up a little bit. All right, so very simple, right? 1 part, okay, I've got olive oil, I've got some red wine vinegar. I'm not even measuring, right? So because you don't have to. So this is my jar, and I'm just gonna put just a little bit because I'm not gonna make a lot. This is 1 part, so whatever it is, 1 part vinegar. I'm gonna put, because I like Dijon mustard, this is just a little Dijon mustard, so I'm going to throw some mustard in there. I'm going to put a tiny bit of salt. And then I like to balance my, this is going to be anticipation with the, well, you can put a little honey in there. And then I have some dried herbs. These are just herb de Provence, which is a French herb mix. You can use anything. You can use Italian herb mix. You can put some dried basil, whatever you like. Throw that in there. And then we are going to shake up just the vinegar and the mustard, and it goes into solution. And now you're going to eyeball this, right? What you're going to eyeball is that, if you can see this, right? I've got 1 part vinegar. And I'm going to put 2 parts olive oil. If you look up traditional vinaigrette recipes, they tell you 1, 2, 3, right? So 1 part acid to 2 parts fat. I don't think you need that much fat, and I think it's still really good. So all I'm going to do now is shake it up. And right before your eyes, you've got a beautiful, you can't see it, but a lovely dressing. And this can live in your refrigerator. You can vary the herbs, you can vary the oils, you can vary the vinegars. And so when you are making your salad or croûtes or something to dip in, or even if you're baking a beautiful piece of fish, you can just put that on there. Again, no preservatives, no methyl cellulose, no guar gum, no gelling gum, easy, right? And there, done. So if I can do this, you can do this. I encourage you to cook at home. We're doing it anyway after we get through this pandemic, which we will very shortly as we all get vaccinated and moving forward and staying healthy. Try to keep those cooking at home habits going. And remember that healthy is homemade. And okay, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you all for your attention.